Yo, it's the weekend tap in, man. This is a special episode, impromptu, no plan, no schedule, no nothing, man. This is just raw me coming at you. Um, so today, man, we just finished up our episode number 12 for season two. Pretty legit. Let me get this a little closer so you guys can check game. Yeah, man. So we just finished that up, man. We're pretty excited about that, man. It's something that we all struggle with. So well, at least I know I do. If you guys have solutions for how to deal with consistency, please put them in the comments right down here. And the reason being is because I'm trying to figure out how to get over being inconsistent. It took me like a month and some change to actually finish this other episode of the podcast, which is crazy, right? And I've had nothing but time. But even when we have time, how do we get past that procrastination monkey? How do we get past that stage to where we want to move but we can't move, like we're stuck with, oh man, and we go back to that thing that's comfortable because change is super uncomfortable, right? So how do we get past that, man? Talk to me, man. I'm trying to figure it out. Did an episode on it and I'm about to produce it right now. So that's another thing too, man. When you're doing your own audio and stuff like that, you thinking that, I'm making mistakes, I suck, it doesn't sound that good, or whatever the case may be. But each time you're getting layers and layers of game, man. So you're learning more and more as you're progressing. So like the production side of it, and I'll share. Let me see if I can share it with you guys what I'm about to do. Um, let's see if it's a Chrome tab. No, let's see, application window. Let's see. And maybe you guys can look, and it's Audacity. It's a free program, but at the same time, I'm about to produce an episode which will help me out. Now I understand how that process works, and a lot of before then I didn't. So doing this because I was questioning myself with consistency or doubt. Right, one of the things that sets in is doubt, and I talk about that because we doubt that we're actually supposed to be doing what we're supposed to be doing, and we doubt that people are actually even listening. Even for this matter, I pay for this, right? And I said that last time. I'm not throwing that out there just to be saying it, but this is something that I'm trying to remain consistent on. I've been doing it every Friday for the last few weeks, but I also did something with Amazon Alexa that I didn't remain consistent on. I've also been inconsistent on my YouTube page. I've been inconsistent on my LinkedIn profile. I've been inconsistent on my Instagram, on all of my Instagram for Drug Leaders to Businessmen, Med Tours LA, and then hair livery, even though I don't do hair livery as much. But I've been struggling with consistency on all those types of things, right? So how do I get around that? And this is something that, may not be comfortable with talking about, but how do we stay consistent? Of course, work forces us to go to work and earn that money, but how do we remain consistent in the other things that make our lives better? So diets I heard is a scam. So just FYI, if you're trying to diet, you may not want to keep doing it. But how do we remain consistent in terms of our workout, in terms of pursuing our dreams, in terms of writing, if that's what we plan on doing? I know a lot of you guys are writing out there, so shout out to my writers. How do we remain consistent in that when we have all these things tugging for our attention? And from what I understand, that we have so many attention bits, right? I think it's like 160 or 180. And just to hold a conversation with someone requires 120 of those bits. And I think I spoke on this last time, but it requires 120 of those bits, right? So when you're thinking about that, it's why whenever someone says, I'm listening to you, and they're holding another conversation or they're doing something else, one of those is suffering, right? You can't give it your full attention. So I struggle with that. I don't like to multitask. And a lot of times that's what we do, is we call ourselves multitasking, and it's not necessarily the healthiest thing for us to do in order to remain productive, right? But how do we get started? How do we get started? How do we stay consistent? I've talked about the book Atomic Habits in the past, which will help with a lot of developing these habits that ultimately lead to us being consistent individuals. Because again, like many of you guys, I am struggling with consistency. How do I stay consistent in this world? Hold on one second. Put my plug in. got these technical difficulties, especially when you're on a roll. You want to give, but sometimes the technical difficulties say otherwise. But again, consistency, right? Trying to remain consistent. Struggle is freaking real. So I talk about three things in a podcast episode. I talk about doubt, I talk about organization, and I talk about time. And when I talk about doubt, I talk about that feeling that you get when you're wondering if you're having an impact or if it's actually even worth continuing to do. And I tell you, one of the easiest things to do in life, right? The absolute most easiest thing you can do in life, easiest, easy, quit, stop, go back to what you always did, right? Those are the easiest things to do in life. The hard thing to do is get up and be consistent. And as parents, I even talk about remaining consistent on the discipline side. That's one of the things I've struggled with in the past too, is remaining consistent as a parent, right? Because you love your kids. And I think that that's our first introduction to consistency is our kids. Are we remaining parents, right? That discipline. Are we consistently telling them no? Or are we bending, right? Because that's when you start to develop that habit of inconsistency because you start to bend a little bit, right? Oh, I just do this a little bit. And they always talk about the slightest deviation. So, like, say, for instance, you have two lines, right? Two lines like this. And no, let me see. I'll show you guys better than I can tell you. All right, right here, you got two lines. And I'm going to show you guys two lines that start off exactly the same. You guys can see these lines, right? You guys can see the two lines. They're not that great, but you guys can see they're starting off, right? So this one is going to start to go up 5 degrees, right? And they're going to go on for time. And this one's going to just deviate slightly 5 degrees. Look at the difference in destination, and I'll show you guys this. So the deviation started to take place about right here. So he deviated just slightly. And you can see that they ended up in two completely different areas, even though the deviation was only 5% or 5 degrees, right? So you could think about that in two different ways. You could think about that in a positive way, right? So if I deviate slightly towards the positive, over time, I'll eventually get away from some of those negatives, right? I'll eventually leave the homies. I'll eventually leave the gang, whatever it is that is my negative. If I deviate slightly, I just stop hanging out. I don't go every night. I go twice a week. Then I go once a week, right? And then you'll start to see your habits start to go to the left, right? Same thing holds true for the negative. I start to slip a little bit more, right? I skip one night of homework, or I stop going to the gym for one night, right? And I've been going consistently for 3 years, right? I just deviate just 5 degrees. Over time, you will end up in two completely different destinations. And that holds true for everything. So, the thing about consistency is even though you thinking like, it's not gonna matter whether if I change that much, if this little habit, or if I go mess with the homies doing this, or if I drink and drive doing this, or if I just try this out and I keep figuring out ways to slightly deviate your path over time. And that's the same thing with diets and everything. I'll just eat a cookie here. I'll just eat one cookie a week. Over a year, you've eaten 52 extra cookies, right? So what does that equate to? So these are things that we may not think have a lot of impact, but they have a tremendous impact on us. And it's up to us to recognize, right, these small, slight, different deviations and habits that we can either develop or get rid of that will ultimately have an impact on our lives. And in the long term, a lot of times you don't see the small things, right? Over time, they accumulate. Same thing with a bank account. Same thing holds true with saving money anytime. Education as well. If you're consistently at it, that's one thing I will say I've been consistent about is education. Now, I can't pat myself on the back. And a lot of times what they say is you need to find your strengths rather than point out your weaknesses. Your weaknesses are your weaknesses. You do need to recognize those. But if you have a lot of strengths, right? If you have certain strengths like consistency in education, I've always loved to learn and teach, right? Didn't realize that I had a knack for it. Now I'm really starting to pursue it from an academic standpoint. Still love business, still love doing business, right? Don't get me wrong. Still love that portion of it. But at the same time, now I'm switching my efforts to where now I can find more educational opportunities. I love it. Loves the freedom it gives me. Loves the time that it gives me with my kids. All those different things, right? So that consistency, man. So talk about that. So we talk about doubt. We talk about organization on the podcast. So we talk about how it's so important to have your stuff organized, right? It's really difficult for you to be consistent if you're not organized, right? If you don't have a proper place to do things, if you're not in the right setting to do things. I talked about my library experience and how that's probably the best place for me to go study for the GMAT, PhD stuff, or whatever, because of the environment, because of the scenery, and because that's away from a lot of the distractions that can easily take place when you're at home. So that, and then time and that procrastination monkey, right? That I talk about with Tim Urban. And if you guys haven't seen the episode that I'm talking about with Tim Urban, let me just show you guys real quick. Let me share this with you guys so you guys can kind of have an idea. And I think I've shared it with you guys in the past. Let's see. Tim Urban. Very popular. Let me see. Show and stream. Let me share something with you. Okay. Let me see. Chrome tab, Tim Urban TED Talk. Let's go ahead and put that in there. And let's see. Okay, Tim Urban. Oh, show and stream. Let me see. Hopefully you guys can see this. This is worth, and I'll post this in another, but it's inside the mind of procrastinator, what has everything to do with consistency. Hold on, let me get a better one than that, because that looks crazy. I think. Let me see. Let me remove that and just bear with your boy for a minute. There we go. I think this will work. Inside the mind of a master procrastinator, right? Master procrastinator, which we're all very, very good at doing.
So in college, I was a government major, which means I had to write a lot of papers. Now, when a normal student writes a paper, they might spread the work out a little like this. So, you get started maybe a little slowly, but you get enough done in the first week that with some heavier days later on, everything gets done and things stay civil. And I would want to do that like that. That would be the plan. I would have it all ready to go, but then actually the paper would come along, and then I would kind of do this. And that would happen every single paper. But then came my 90-page senior thesis, a paper you're supposed to spend a year on. I knew for a paper like that, my normal workflow was not an option. It was way too big a project. So I planned things out, and I decided I kind of had to go something like this. This is how the year would go. So I'd start off light, and I'd bump it up in the middle months. And then at the end, I would kick it up into high gear, just like a little staircase. How hard could it be to just walk up the stairs? No big deal, right? But then, funniest thing happened. Those first few months, they came and went, and I couldn't quite do stuff. So we had an awesome new revised plan. But then those middle months actually went by, and I didn't really write words. And so we were here. And then 2 months turned into 1 month, which turned into 2 weeks. And one day I woke up with 3 days until the deadline, still not having written a word. And so I did the only thing I could. I wrote 90 pages over 72 hours, pulling not one, but 2 all-nighters. Humans are not supposed to pull 2 all-nighters. Sprinted across campus, dove in slow motion, and got it in just at the deadline. I thought that was the end of everything. But a week later, I get a call. And it's the school. And they say, "Is this Tim Urban?" And I say, "Yeah." And they say, we need to talk about your thesis. I say, okay. And they say, it's the best one we've ever seen. That did not happen. It was a very, very bad thesis. I just wanted to enjoy that one moment when all of you thought, this guy is amazing. No, it was very, very bad. Anyway, today I'm a writer, blogger guy. I write the blog Wait, But Why? And a couple of years ago, I decided to write about procrastination. My behaviors always perplexed the non-procrastinators around me, and I wanted to explain to the non-procrastinators of the world what goes on in the heads of procrastinators and why we are the way we are. Now, I had a hypothesis that the brains of procrastinators were actually different than the brains of other people. And to test this, I found an MRI lab that actually let me scan both my brain and the brain of a proven non-procrastinator, so I could compare them, and I actually brought them here to show you today, and I want you to take a look carefully to see if you can notice a difference. And I know that if you're not a trained brain expert, it's not that obvious, but just take a look, okay? So here's the brain of a non-procrastinator. Now, here's my brain. There is a difference. Both brains have a rational decision maker in them, but the procrastinator's brain also has an instant gratification monkey. Now, what does this mean for the procrastinator? Well, it means everything's fine until this happens. So the rational decision maker will make the rational decision to do something productive, but the monkey doesn't like that plan. So he actually takes the wheel, and he says, actually, let's read the entire Wikipedia page of the Nancy Kerrigan-Tanya Harding scandal, because I just remembered that happened. Then we're going to go over to the fridge. We're going to see if there's anything new in there since 10 minutes ago. After that, we're going to go on a YouTube spiral that starts with videos of Richard Feynman talking about magnets and ends much, much later with us watching interviews with Justin Bieber's mom. All of that's going to take a while, so we're not going to really have room on the schedule for any work today. Sorry. Now, what is going on here? The instant gratification monkey does not seem like a guy you want behind the wheel. He lives entirely in the present moment. He has no memory of the past, no knowledge of the future, and he only cares about two things: easy and fun. Now, in the animal world, that works fine. If you're a dog and you spend your whole life doing nothing other than easy and fun things, you're a huge success. And to the monkey, humans are just another animal species. He has to keep well slept.
Those who
well
just
fed,
joined, appreciate you
propagating into
guys.
The next generation, which in tribal times might have worked okay. But if you haven't noticed, now we're not in tribal times. We're in an advanced civilization, and the monkey does not know what that is. Which is why we have another guy in our brain, the rational decision maker, who gives us the ability to do things no other animal can do. We can visualize the future. We can see the big picture. We can make long-term plans. And he wants to take all of that into account, and he wants to just have us do whatever makes sense to be doing right now. Now, sometimes it makes sense to be doing things that are easy and fun, like when you're having dinner or going to bed or enjoying well-earned leisure time. That's why there's an overlap. Sometimes they agree. But other times, it makes much more sense to be doing things that are harder and less pleasant for the sake of the big picture, and that's when we have a conflict. And for the procrastinator, that conflict tends to end a certain way every time, leaving him spending a lot of time in this orange zone, an easy and fun place that's entirely out of the make sense circle. I call it the dark playground. Now, the dark playground is a place that all of you procrastinators out there know very well. It's where leisure activities happen at times when leisure activities are not supposed to be happening. The fun you have in the dark playground isn't actually fun because it's completely unearned, and the air is filled with guilt, dread, anxiety, self-hatred, all those good procrastinator feelings. And the question is, in this situation, with the monkey behind the wheel, how does the procrastinator ever get himself over here to this blue zone? A less pleasant place, but where really important things happen. Well, turns out that the procrastinator has a guardian angel, someone who's always looking down on him and watching over him in his darkest moments, someone called the panic monster. Now, the panic monster is dormant most of the time, but he suddenly wakes up anytime a deadline gets too close or there's danger of public embarrassment, a career disaster, or some other scary consequence. And importantly, he's the only thing that the monkey is terrified of. Now, he became very relevant in my life pretty recently because the people of TED reached out to me about 6 months ago and invited me to do a TED Talk. Now, of course, I said yes. It's always been a dream of mine to have done a TED Talk in the past. But in the middle of all this excitement, the rational decision maker seemed to have something else on his mind. He was saying, are we clear on what we just accepted? Do we get what's going to be now happening one day in the future? We need to sit down and work on this right now. And the monkey said, totally agree, but also let's just open Google Earth and let's zoom into the bottom of India, like 200 feet above the ground, and we're going to scroll up for 2.5 hours till we get to the top of the country so we can get a better feel for India.
What's up, Mon? I see you.
So that's what we did that day. As 6 months turned into 4, and then 2, and then 1, the people of TED decided to release the speakers. And I opened up the website, and there was my face staring right back at me, and guess who woke up?
The panic.
So the panic monster starts losing his mind, and a few seconds later, the whole system's in mayhem. And the monkey, who, remember, he's terrified of the panic monster, boom, he's up the tree. And finally, the rational decision maker can take the wheel and I can start working on the talk. Now, the panic monster explains all kinds of pretty insane procrastinated behavior, like how someone like me could spend 2 weeks unable to start the opening sentence of a paper and then miraculously find the unbelievable work ethic to stay up all night and write 8 pages. And this entire situation with the 3 characters, this is the procrastinator's system. It's not pretty, but in the end, it works. And this is what I decided to write about on the blog just a couple of years ago. Now, when I did, I was amazed by the response. Literally thousands of emails came in from all different kinds of people, from all over the world, doing all different kinds of things. These were people who were nurses and bankers and painters and engineers and lots of PhD students. And they were all writing, saying the same thing. I have this problem too. But what struck me was the contrast between the light tone of the post and the heaviness of these emails. These people were writing with intense frustration about what procrastination had done to their lives, about what this monkey had done to them. And I thought about this, and I said, if the procrastinator system works, then what's going on? Why are all these people in such a dark place? Well, turns out that there's 2 kinds of procrastination. Everything I've talked about today, the examples I've given, they all have deadlines. And when there's deadlines, the effects of procrastination are contained to the short term because the panic monster gets involved. But there's a second kind of procrastination that happens in situations when there is no deadline. So if you want to have a career where you want to be a self-starter, something in the arts, something entrepreneurial, there's no deadlines on those things at first because nothing's happening at first, not until you've gone out and done the hard work to get some momentum, to get things going. There's also all kinds of important things outside of your career that don't involve any deadlines, like seeing your family or exercising and taking care of your health, working on your relationship or getting out of a relationship that isn't working. Now, if the procrastinator's only mechanism of doing these hard things is the panic monster, that's a problem because in all of these non-deadline situations, the panic monster doesn't show up. He has nothing to wake up for. So the effects of procrastination, they're not contained. They just extend outward forever. And it's this long-term kind of procrastination that's much less visible and much less talked about than the funnier, short-term, deadline-based kind. It's usually suffered quietly and privately. And it can be the source of a huge amount of long-term unhappiness and regrets. And I thought, that's why these people are emailing, and that's why they're in such a bad place. It's not that they're cramming for some project. It's that long-term procrastination has made them feel like a spectator at times in their own lives. The frustration was not that they couldn't achieve their dreams, it's that they weren't even able to start chasing them. So I read these emails and I had a little bit of an epiphany that I don't think non-procrastinators exist. That's right. I think all of you are procrastinators. Now, you might not all be a mess, like some of us. And some of you may have a healthy relationship with deadlines. But remember, the monkey's sneakiest trick is when the deadlines aren't there.
Yeah.
Now, I want to show you one last thing. I call this a life calendar.
Oh,
that's one box for every week of a 90-year life. That's not that many boxes.
That's crazy.
Especially since we've already used a bunch of those. So I think we need to all take a long, hard look at that calendar. We need to think about what we're really procrastinating on, because everyone is procrastinating on something in life. We need to stay aware of the instant gratification monkey. That's a job for all of us. And because there's not that many boxes on there, it's a job that should probably start today. Well, maybe not today, but sometime soon. Thank you.
So yeah, man, I show that to my students, man, before when we first start the semester, and just kind of get them in tune to what's going on, and also letting them know like that happens to everybody and the best of us, man. And I can't stress enough how much I procrastinate. And I imagine that there's many of us that do it as well. So I show that to my students, and I try to get them to start moving on things that are important, because I think it was even Deion Cole that has some like 30-something summers or whatever, something, how many ever summers you have left. And when you start to think about that and you put it in that context of, lifespan and things like that, you start to move on things. And I think Tim Urban had a really, really valid point in terms of entrepreneurs. The consistency isn't forced upon you or isn't already in place. When you have a job, when you have somewhere you need to go to every day, and you have a boss, and you have all this chain of command coming down, that kind of puts your consistency in place already. It's kind of, it's not necessarily self-directed, but when you're an entrepreneur and you have to get up and do things and create things, right? How do you stay consistent? And this is something that I've been struggling with for a very long time. And I don't know if many of you guys have, but I know that I have. And if you're dealing with that, and, without having someone here to hold you accountable, it's tough, dog. It's really hard. It's really difficult. It's not easy at all. I'm trying. I'm really, really trying. And, just doing the small things. And I think that that's the first start, is just being consistent in small things and then growing them to larger ones. But it's something that, we all struggle with. I try to be as transparent as possible. And a new episode is coming out. So I was doing this live to kind of tap in to see what you guys are struggling with. I don't know why my comments aren't showing on here, man, but it's all good. No problem at all. We're not worried about that too much. Yeah, man. So that was it. I was just tapping in with you guys. I wanted to share that in terms of procrastination, so you guys can see the Tim Urban piece. He does have a blog as well called Wait, But Why, where he writes in really, really long form blogging. So if you're interested in learning how to blog, he's a really good blogger. He's a really good writer. And yeah, he may procrastinate, but when he does deliver, it is lengthy. So yeah, man, this is the weekly tap in, a weekend special. Just hollering at you guys and seeing what's good and making sure you guys are healthy and that you're moving something this weekend. Move something. I don't care what it is. Start something small. Start something that you can practice consistency with, because you could see we don't have all day here. We don't have forever on this earth. So let's do some things that give life meaning, right? And accomplishment is a huge self-esteem booster. And it's something that we need to constantly self-esteem. And that's I think we kind of brush over that term, self-esteem, not coming from external. This is how you feel about yourself, which is probably the most important feeling, how you feel about yourself. Because the external world's going to constantly change. And if we give that too much attention, then we become slaves to what everyone else thinks, what everyone else feels. So we don't want to do that, right? We want to be slaves to how we feel, right? How our own feeling is. And the first thing we need to do is get out of our head, remain consistent, right? And that gets what removing doubt, becoming organized, and setting time aside to do these things. These are the ways that you remain consistent and remain a professional. Can't be in our feelings. We have to still deliver. We cannot be sidetracked by too many other things. We have to still deliver. So that's it, man. I wish you guys the best. Let's get started on something this weekend. Let's do it. Commit to it. Let's see what we can do. Put it in the comments of what you guys are going to finish, start. Let me know. Let's interact. Let's talk about it. Put it in the comments because you never know or who will be inspired by something that you're trying to get consistent on. All right. God bless. I'll see you guys Monday.